Hello students, today we are going to continue with our discussion on states of matter and more specifically gases. We'll discuss a few laws and their applicability on real as well as ideal gases. The first of the gas laws that we are going to discuss is known as Charles' law. The expansion of gases was investigated by J.A.C. Charles in 1787. But it was Gay-Lussac in 1801 who first published a systematic set of results which formed the basis of this law. This law states that at a constant pressure, the volume of a fixed mass of gas is proportional to its temperature. Now, in spite of Gay-Lussac's work, this is still known as Charles' law. So in symbols, we can say that V is proportional to T when P is constant, where V stands for the volume of gas, T for the temperature of gas, and P for the pressure of gas. Or we can also say that V by T is constant. This is Charles' law. When we plot a graph between the volume of a gas against the temperature of the gas at constant pressure, we obtain straight line. Because according to Charles' law, the volume of a gas is directly proportional to its temperature at constant pressure. We obtain different lines for different values of pressure. For example, this line is for 0.5 atmosphere, this is for 1 atmosphere, and this is for 2 atmosphere. Now let's see what exactly happens according to Charles' law. As you can see in the animation that as the temperature increases, the volume of the gas also increases, but the pressure remains constant. So, as per Charles' law, when the pressure is constant, the volume of a gas is directly proportional to its temperature. The next law is Boyle's law. It states that provided the temperature is kept constant, the volume of a fixed mass of gas is inversely proportional to its pressure. Or in simpler language, we can say that at constant temperature, if the pressure is increased, then the volume gets smaller and vice versa. It was first investigated by Robert Boyle in 1662. In terms of symbols, we can write that V is proportional to 1 upon P when T is constant, where V is the volume of the gas, P is the pressure of the gas, and T is the temperature of the gas. So at constant temperature, volume is inversely proportional to the gas pressure. Or PV is equal to constant. This is Boyle's law. So when a graph is plotted between pressure and 1 by volume, we obtain a straight line at constant temperature. This is in accordance with Boyle's law, which states that at constant temperature, the pressure of a gas is directly proportional to its 1 by volume, or the pressure of the gas is inversely proportional to its volume. Now, as per Boyle's law, if the temperature of the gas is constant, then its pressure is inversely proportional to its volume. So we can see at a constant temperature, its pressure is increased to the double of its initial value. So the final volume becomes half of the initial volume of the gas, considering all the other factors are constant. We can combine Boyle's and Charles' laws into one grand summary of the properties of ideal gases by using the equation PV divided by T is equal to constant. The name given to the constant is not too surprisingly the gas constant, which is denoted by capital R. Its value is 8.314 joule per Kelvin per mole. So now we have PV is equal to RT. Actually, this equation is only true for 1 mole of gas. If we have n moles of gas, we finally arrive at the ideal gas equation, that is PV is equal to nRT. Now when we use this equation, we have to be careful about the units. Pressure P should be measured in Newton per meter square or Pascal, volume V in meter cube, temperature T in Kelvin. Often pressure is also measured in atmospheres. So the conversion between the units can be done noting that 1 atmosphere is equal to 1.013 into 10 raised to 5 Newton per meter square, or 1 atmosphere is equal to 101.3 kilopascal. However, if we use pressures in atmosphere, we will have to use the non-standard unit for the gas constant R, that is equal to 0.082 decimeter cube atmosphere per Kelvin per mole. Let's take an example. A balloon containing 20 liters of helium gas was connected to an empty cylinder of volume 80 liters. If the initial pressure was 1 atmosphere, what should be the final pressure? Now, since the temperature is constant, we can apply Boyle's law, according to which P1 V1 is equal to P2 V2, where P1 and V1 are the pressure and the volume of the gas initially, and P2 and V2 are the final pressure and volume of the gas. So we can write P2, that is the final pressure, is equal to P1 V1 divided by V2. Now P1 is given in the question, that is 1 atmosphere. V1, that is the initial volume, is 20 liters, divided by V2, that is the final volume, which is 20 liters plus 80 liters. We get 20 upon 100, which is 0.2 atmosphere. This is our final answer. Let's take another example. Imagine there is a system which maintains constant pressure irrespective of the amount of gases inside it. Now suppose at instant A it contains N1 moles of a gas X at temperature T1. At instant B, N2 moles of other non-reacting gas Y were injected into the system. We have to find the overall change in the temperature of the system. Now since it's given in the question that the pressure of the system is constant, we can apply Charles' law here. So according to Charles' law, V1 divided by T1 is equal to V2 divided by T2. Now since the volume of any gas is directly proportional to the number of its moles as per the ideal gas equation, we can write N initial divided by T1 is equal to N final divided by T2. Now N initial is equal to N1 and N final is equal to N1 plus N2. So this equation becomes N1 divided by T1 is equal to N1 plus N2 divided by T2. On rearranging this equation, we can write T2 is equal to N1 plus N2 divided by N1 into T1. So the change in temperature, that is delta T, will be equal to T2 minus T1. On substituting the value of T2 from this equation, we can write N1 plus N2 divided by N1 into T1 minus T1. On solving this equation, we get delta T is equal to N2 T1 divided by N1. This is the overall change in the temperature of the system. It has been said that if Boyle and Charles were doing their work with modern equipment, they would not have discovered their laws. This is not really true, but the idea behind the statement is that the sensitive apparatus that we now have available show that no real gases obey their laws completely. Many behave in ways that would have made the laws difficult to discover. Actually, the intermolecular forces between the molecules in a real gas are mainly responsible for the deviations. Gases with the strongest intermolecular forces show the greatest deviations. However, there is another reason why we might expect real gases to show non-ideal behavior. Real molecules have a volume of their own, but the molecules of an ideal gas are assumed to have no volume. We know that for ideal gases, the value of PV divided by nRT should be equal to 1. When we plot these values against the density of various gases, we find that at low density, generally the ideal gas behavior is followed. But as the density of the gas increases, the deviation from the ideal gas behavior also increases. At low pressures, the graphs obtained for Charles' law or Boyle's law by most of the gases are nearly straight. We call such lines the ideal gas lines. But as the pressure or the density increases, the deviation of the gases also increases. For some gases, the deviations are very small. For example, noble gases such as helium, neon, argon, etc. But for some gases like ammonia, the deviations are enormous. One of the first equations meant to fit real gases was invented by J. H. van der Waals in 1873, which bears his name. To see the effect of molecular size, imagine a large-scale model of a gas in which tennis balls can bounce around at random in a box. So, if the box is a 1 meter cube, say this is the box, its volume will be 1 meter cube, or we can say 10 raised to 6 centimeter cube. Now one tennis ball might be into the box, so the next tennis ball will no longer have 10 raised to 6 centimeter cube to move around it. Now suppose the volume of the tennis ball is 100 centimeter cube. So it will have only 10 raised to 6 minus 100 centimeter cube space available to it. Now the third ball will be able to move in 10 raised to 6 minus 200 centimeter cube and so on. Actually, the available volume is even less than these figures. Now the key thing is that the volume of the container is not the volume in which the molecules can move. The actual volume open to them is less than that of the container. For this reason, van der Waals wrote the volume of the gas as V minus NB. Here N is the number of moles of gas and B is the volume that is no longer available to each molecule. So thus so far we have P into V minus NB is equal to nRT. Now the second correction he made was to allow for intermolecular forces. Assume that you were a molecule in the center of a gas, or at least not close to the walls of the container. So you would be surrounded by a sphere of other molecules. So if this is your position, there will be many other molecules around you. You will feel some attraction for them and them for you. Because of the spherical arrangement, you would experience the same strength of force in every direction. Right? This cozy symmetrical situation does not hold near the walls of the container. For example, if this is your position. Here you would have molecules only on one side. That is this side. The influence of their attraction would be to pull you back into the body of the gas. With this retarding force, you would not collide with the walls of the container with the same speed or momentum as you would if the other molecules were absent. Given that the collisions of the molecules with the walls of the container give rise to the pressure of the gas, the effect of the intermolecular forces on the molecules near the walls is to reduce the pressure that the gas exerts. Therefore, if the real pressure is less than the ideal, we have to add a correction to the real pressure to give a value closer to the ideal figure. Van der Waals wrote the corrected pressure to give a value closer to the ideal figure. So he wrote the corrected pressure as P plus AN square divided by V square. Now putting the volume and the pressure together, we finally have the equation P plus An square divided by V square into V minus Nb is equal to RT. This is known as van der Waals equation. By measuring the way the pressure and volume of real gases behave, we can try to fit the equation to the experimental points. Let's take an example. The value of the van der Waals constant B for neon is given to us, that is 17.10 into 10 raised to minus 6. We have to calculate the molecular diameter of neon. Now we know that B is equal to 4 into volume occupied by the molecule in 1 mole of the gas. So that will be equal to 4 into volume occupied by the molecule. We know that kinetic theory considers molecules as spherical objects, and the volume of a sphere is 4 by 3 pi r cube, where r is the radius of the sphere, into the number of molecules in 1 mole of the gas, that is Avogadro number. So in expanding it, we can write 4 into 4 by 3 into pi, that is 3.14, into r cube into 6.02 into 10 raised to 23. Now the value of B is given to us, that is 17.10 into 10 raised to minus 6. On rearranging this equation, we can write that r cube is equal to, on solving it further, 5.89 into 10 raised to minus 17, or r is equal to 3.89 into 10 raised to minus 6 meters. Now we know that diameter, if represented by d, is equal to 2r. So in multiplying this value by 2, we get 7.78 into 10 raised to minus 6 meter. That should be the molecular diameter for neon. Let's solve another example. At 27 degrees centigrade, two identical balloons are filled with different gases to the same pressure of 3 atmosphere. Balloon 1 has a gas of molecular mass 20 and contains 10 kg of the gas. Balloon 2 has a gas of molecular mass of 30 and contains 2 kg of the gas. The balloon 1 leaked to a pressure of 1 atmosphere in 3 hours. How long will it take for the balloon 2 to come at the pressure of 1 atmosphere? So first of all, let's write the equation for gas 1. P1V1 is equal to N1R-T1, which is for the initial conditions, and P2V2 is equal to N1R-T2. This is our equation 1 and this is our equation 2. On dividing these two equations, we get P1 upon P2 is equal to N1 upon N2. I hope you remember that these are the ideal gas equations, where P stands for pressure, V for volume, N for number of moles, R for gas constant, and T for temperature. This is for the initial conditions and this is for the final conditions that we stated earlier. So now P1 is known to us, that is the initial pressure, which was 3 atmosphere. P2 is the pressure after leakage, that is 1 atmosphere. So putting these values in also of N, for N1 is equal to 10 by M if we consider M as the molar mass of gas 1, and N2 will be equal to W1 divided by M, where W1 we assume will be the final mass, that is W kgs, and M is again the molar mass of the gas. So on putting these values, we get 3 upon 1 is equal to 10 upon W1, or W1 is equal to 10 upon 3 kilograms. Now for gas 1, the mass effused will be equal to 10 kilograms minus 10 by 3 kilograms. That will be 20 by 3 kgs. Now let's write the equations for gas 2. Again, P1 divided by P2 is equal to N1 divided by N2. So P1, as usual, that is the initial pressure, was 3 atmosphere. P2, the pressure after leakage, should be 1 atmosphere. Now N1 will be equal to 2 kilograms as given in the question, divided by, say, M2, that is the molar mass of gas 2, and N2 will be equal to W2. We assume that the final mass will be W2 kilograms, divided by M. So P1 upon P2 is equal to N1 upon N2. On substituting the values in this equation, we'll get 3 by 1 is equal to 2 upon W2, or W2 will be equal to 2 by 3 kilograms. So mass effused for gas 2 will be equal to 2 kilograms, that is initial mass, minus 2 by 3 kgs. 2 by 3 we have just calculated, so which will be equal to 4 by 3 kilograms. Now we know that if R1 and R2 are the rates of effusion, they will be equal to under root M2 upon M1. Now R1 will be equal to V1 upon T1, where V1 is the volume of the gas and T1 will be the time taken for it to effuse. Since volume is proportional to mass, that is W, we can write R1 upon R2 as W1 upon T1 into W2 upon T2, which will be equal to M2 upon M1 raised to 1 by 2. Now T1 is given to us, that is 3 hours. So putting the values in this equation, we'll get W1, that is 10 by 3 kgs, into T2, which we are supposed to calculate, divided by T1, that is 3 hours, into 1 by W2. W2 is 2 by 3 kgs. This will be equal to M2 upon M1, that is 30 divided by 20 raised to 1 by 2. On rearranging this equation and on solving, we get T2 is equal to 0.73 hours. This will be the time taken for balloon 2 to come at the pressure of 1 atmosphere. Now let's discuss the applicability of van der Waals equation. Let us see how good is the van der Waals equation. This figure shows us the type of graph predicted from the van der Waals equation as well as obtained from the experiment. As you can see, volume is plotted on the x-axis, the unit is meter cube, and pressure is plotted on the y-axis in the units of Pascal. Each of these lines on the graph show how values of pressure and volume change at fixed temperature. Each line is called an isotherm. Theory and practice agree when the temperature is high, but at low temperature we run into trouble. For example, the isotherm of the real gas becomes horizontal while the one predicted from the equation oscillates up and down. The reason for the difference is that under particular conditions of temperature and pressure, real gases liquefy. This behavior is not covered by van der Waals equation. To understand why the graph becomes horizontal, we must return to our example of the gas trapped in a cylinder fitted with a piston, as we saw in Charles and Boyle's laws animations. Now let us assume that we keep the gas at a low temperature, say T1, and that is starting volume is somewhere far to the right of the graph. Now as the pressure increases, the volume decreases. But at a particular pressure, we know that real gases will liquefy. If you were able to look inside the cylinder, you would see tiny droplets of liquid appearing. The volume of the droplets will be very much smaller than the volume of the gas that it replaces. So the volume of the gas decreases rapidly. We would see the piston being pushed further into the cylinder by the outside pressure. That is what happens along the horizontal part of the graph. Eventually, when all the gas is liquefied, it takes a huge increase in pressure to change the volume. The molecules in a liquid are already very close together, so it is very hard to reduce the volume any further. This stage is shown by the lines becoming almost vertical on the graph. The isotherm which marks the border between gases and liquids is known as critical isotherm. The temperature of the critical isotherm is called the critical temperature, Tc. Above the critical temperature, the gases will not liquefy no matter how high the pressure is. The reason for this behavior is that the molecules have so much thermal energy that the intermolecular forces are not powerful enough to make the molecules stick together. Each gas has its own critical temperature because the strengths of the intermolecular forces in each gas are different. Below the critical temperature, a gas can be liquefied. The van der Waals equation is surprisingly good when we take into account the fairly simple changes that were made to the ideal gas equation. Where it fails is in not taking intermolecular forces into account in sufficient detail to predict when a gas might liquefy. There have been other attempts to find an equation that fits real gases. One that has proved fairly successful is called the virial equation. It looks like this. PV is equal to A plus P upon V plus C upon V square plus T upon V cube and so on. Here A, B, C all vary with temperature and their values have to be found from experiment. However, the values of some of them can be predicted from theory also.